All right, let's get after it. It's been a minute since I've done a macro video. So I just want to say thank you for everyone who's been joining. I've had quite a few subscribers the past month or so, and appreciate everyone leaving comments and stuff. I am here in the comments. I do realize I'm trying to investigate how to get these to you guys to make it economically feasible for myself and for you, and just figured out how to do it. I've been doing a lot of research. Not to make excuses, but in my primary job, thankfully been super busy recently. Hence, like all my videos are work videos. I figured I'd take a moment to try to say hey and appreciate it all. So I am looking into it. So I appreciate that. To piggyback off of that, I have had a lot of requests in the past and recently of explaining some of the ones that always appear on my screen. So that's this guy here, and also rectangular. This in my videos are usually what you see, because these are this is how I roll right here. This is my everyday carry, and this is how Mr. Goodbar here does primarily all the work, and then the rest of them come in as they needed, So when it comes to my favorite macros, I love all my children the same, but Mr. Goodbar, I don't know if I could use Corel anymore without Mr. Goodbar here. So I figured I would explain this one and kind of go over what it does. So I'm going to move rectangular for now. We'll go over that. That's a whole other video. But I'm going to keep page turner here. So kicking off, Mr. Goodbar, I call it Mr. Goodbar because it's basically a toolbar, but I got the name because I am a true hip hop head.
Hello, my name is Mr. Goodbar.
But basically it is a toolbar in essence, but it's a hyper customized toolbar for me. Corel has its own toolbars. So, the top of Corel here is a toolbar. The side of the Corel here on the left is literally a toolbar where you can select your different things here. And you can, customize Corel's toolbars, but you still have to learn how Corel lays out their toolbar. So if you have access to macros, why not create your own super customized toolbar for yourself? That's why it looks so chaotic though, because this is the epitome of, necessity is the mother and or father or whatever of invention. So this thing kind of grew as needed. It was originally a dedication to my good boy he's a huge footy fan. He loves soccer, football across the world. And it was called Corner Kick, and it used to live down here, and it was just this little tiny nub of a thing. And I used to use it to change the color of lines here, outline lines and stuff like that. As I was sitting down and sort of going over my head how I'm going to approach this, I started to realize that I was going down a rabbit hole just on these colors alone, and I can do a whole video on that. So I'm going to try to refrain from getting too caught up in how important the lines are, and then try to keep going on the rest of the buttons and just explain overall the bar and not get too caught up into what each of these do. But I will do a whole other thing, because the changing the colors in here is really important to how I produce, do production files and stuff like that for real deal stuff. So anyway, let's get into it. Starting with, I will start where it was. So originally this little guy was in the corner, and it was just a matter of being able to change colors of outlines here. And I know a lot of people who use Corel, or people who don't know much about it, who are still watching, they say, well, all you got to do is right click something. Let's say if I want to make a rectangle here. So if I have like a 2x2, I make a rectangle here. All I have to do is come over here to the palette on the right and just right click a color, and it will change the color of the outline. I get that, but my macros are primarily to be speedy, but they reduce cognitive load, I call it, or mental bandwidth of having to stop and if you're in the zone, you're just cooking along, and you're sitting there and just making boom 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 and stuff. But then you have to stop what you're doing, come over here, think about that it's a right click, not a left click, which you want to do left click. Left click fills it, right click changes the color, and it's just 2 or 3 more steps. And the whole idea behind macros is at least to do 2 things, if not more, in one button push. And Here you have nice big targets, and you can keep in that left finger mode of just clicking, 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 and you don't have to stop what you're doing, think, take yourself out of the game for even a split second, and then come back to where I was. So if I want to change any of these to different colors, I just hit blue, I just hit red, I just hit purple, and it'll change whatever color I need, green. And again, this becomes important when I'm doing components and I want to keep components the same color. So like, these components will be green, this component's purple, these components blue, this is black, this is red, this is magenta. So it helps me to keep the wireframe, because I work in a wireframe, sort of like they call it a hairline, and it's lightweight and it's quick and it lets me see through things. And it's not until I'm ready to make a part for production that I go actually filled. So anyway, so this just allows me to work in wireframe quickly and change things over. But the added bonus of that is that once things are filled, if they have a fill color, then all I have to do is push this button and it also will unfill for me. Whereas that's multiple steps in Corel. And again, I don't have to think about it. I just have to push this button and I'm going to have an orange outline, but I also will no longer be filled. And that way we're good to go. Also, dealing with lines is, and that's kind of how this is laid out. This thing kind of started over here and it kept getting bigger and it kept emerging out. And eventually I said, I'm just going to make my own bar and it's going to cross over the whole screen. But the areas here kind of have to do with things, and I kind of kept things in areas. So while we're in this area here, this all has to do with lines and outlines. So again, so if I want to take this and make it hairline, I just push a button and it changes everything to hairline. And again, Corel, I keep the properties Docker open over on my other page here, but it's, again, you have to stop and find this pull down, and you have to kind of hit that target, go look for it, read a little bit. And so this just gives me a hot button ready to go. And then also I have here, I can change the thickness of the line based on what I input here. Now, granted, it's the same thing that Corel lets you do, except Corel has a finite number of things. And because I work in a 1-to-1, 1 inch equals 1 inch, I oftentimes need thicker than 0.014. A lot of these values are for working with like graphics and things that are going to be on a 8.5 by 11 normal sheet of paper, versus when I'm, kind of pulled out like on something like this, and I need a nice bold outline here, right? This is a 2-inch outline. And when I come to this pull down, it stops at half. So I oftentimes am stopping and typing and things like that. So again, having a dedicated hot thing here where I can keep this at 2 and it no longer it doesn't disappear. And then I can toggle this on and off as I need it, and it stays hot for, whatever I'm doing. So let's say I want to do like a 0.3, then I can hit this, keep it 0.3, and then toggle it off. And then if I want to, I just push this button, I'm back to hairline, and we're good to go. So, it's something like that. If it just saves that amount of time. But again, I'll do another video of how important this is on basically how I work. And again, so I don't want to get sidetracked. The other one is I did a video where I added this number here. This is how I can also change the arrows. And again, Corel in the property Docker, but you have to come and select, and oftentimes you're scrolling down. This is how you add an arrow to the end of a line in Corel. But what if you just want to hit, put arrows on things really quickly? So all you got to do at that point is just hit that button and keep it toggled. And then you can go ahead and, hit that number 4, and that's going to put your arrows on the end, or whatever number arrow you want. And then when you hit that button, you're going to get those arrows, and it's already hot button. So if I'm doing call outs and things like that, I can keep this to a hot assigned arrow that I want. And then it's going to change that arrow, but it's just going to stay that way. And then I can deselect it. Anyway, it's just a way of being faster than, again, having to go through the library here and then finding, And so if you hover over one of the arrows here, it'll tell you what number that is. So you can see where Corel's arrow is 34. So then if I want that, I can just type it in here, and then that keeps it hot. And then I will get that end every time I do it. So anyway, so that's that as far as keeping, for these guys here. Now for dotted and this little purple button here, this is for doing install instructions. So let's say here, so I use these dotted lines to represent circuits. Because we are a Underwriters Laboratory UL shop, that we have to make sure everything's safe and everything. So we have to do installation instructions that get shipped out with every sign. And part of those installation instructions are that you have to call out circuits. So in order to do these circuits, I like a dotted line, a broken line around what the sign's going to be, and then showing that dotted line go to like a power supply. So that way, this shows here, you have your branch circuit, here's your power supply. This one circuit goes to all of this, you're good to go. So a quick way of making that is, what I did is I take and I select, and then using this purple button right here, and again, you don't know what it is, I know what it is because I made it. I push this button and it takes a percentage of the overall size and then makes sort of a pleasing percentage bigger around it. So all I got to do is hit that button, boom. I click dotted, and then I click the color I want, and it will do a dotted line. Now again, in the properties, sure, why not? That's easy. But you can see where Corel has all types of flavors of dotted lines. And so again, hunting down the one I want, and some of these look an awful lot alike. So why not have a hot button that's ready to go? And so that's all I did there. And what you got to do when you program a dotted line, it's actually kind of complicated, is that it's a percentage of what's on and what's off and what's on. So you got to go in there and find the one you want and set it up. And plus it also makes it a 16th line. So it changes the thickness and everything. So again, like I say, when I do a button, I try to make a button do multiple things at once. So, and you can see where I name it lasso. So if I go like this and I surround this and I push this button, it names it as lasso. So I've lassoed this. But you can see where if I need to do multiple circuits, how easy that is. So if I go here and I hit group, and I group this and I group this, and I can change the spacing a little bit because it doesn't matter what it looks like. And then what I can do is just lasso each of these, right? And then just that easily change these over to a dotted line. But then I can just change the color for each circuit. I'll make that one green. And then it's just a matter of, replacing this circuit, making another power supply there, making another power supply there. And then all I have to do is, change this color to orange. I can flip it. And, there you go. So that's that one. I'll make a blue one there. So again, this little guy here is all about making my instructions quicker, but it's with dealing with lines, changing their colors. And again, I'm trying not to go down rabbit holes because I can do whole things just on that. So anyway, so there you go. That's basically that part of it. And it's kind of where the whole thing started, and then it grew to, so there. Let's talk about here in this group where you got G to G, nugget, and all that. This is just for naming parts. So the way I try to use this to try to find, I try to find objects later, is it's important to me to try to name everything. So like when I'm trying to find here, I can click this. This is called through shape. So if you look down at the bottom left, it's called through shape. This is called reference red outline. Everything has a name. This is called a 2. This is called a 1. I mean, I know it's a 1, but I name it a 1 on purpose. This right here is a clamp symbol. So later I can find it. I can search for things called clamp symbol, and I can find it. So I have a whole separate macro for naming shapes and naming things in batches. And I can, if I want to name anything, I just select it, hit name shapes, and it's going to change the name of everything all at once. But for the usual suspects, I have this part right here. So let's just say I've got some random shapes here and I just want to name them. Let's just fill them real quick. So I can take this, if I hit through, it's going to make sure that, because this will do a lot at once, and that if you accidentally do all of them at once, it can be a big mistake, and undo is not going to help you, because if you accidentally name 1,000 shapes, you can't undo 1,000 times. So I on these ones, I have safeties to make sure that this is what I want to do. So I'm going to name this one through, and now this shape is called through. These basically don't have names yet. I just want to name this rectangle. I go over here, I name this one inline, and it actually does another step. I can name this one nugget. I can name this one jiggy, and that one also changes it to what I do. If I want to make this the face of the sign, I hit face, and now it has its own dedicated name. So these right here just change the names of everything. But again, it's easier than taking this out. But if I do have to get custom and do things on a batch or whatever, I will pull this out. But that's what this is for. And then that makes it easier to later find all of these parts. That's what send it's for. Again, I can go over this one later. But if I want to find a face, there you go. It isolates it. It finds it. If I want to find the jiggy, I name this one jiggy. There it is. If I want to find the inline, there was inline. There you go. Where's the through shape? It's right there. There it is. So that's the importance of naming things, because then, you know, when you have a lot of them and they're everywhere, then what you can do is then dig them out and find the inlines. There they are. You can find the faces. There they are. You know, so it's very important when you've got piles and piles and piles of stuff like this and everything's piled up on each other, to be able to find something, make sure it's named. So that's part of what this does here. I name all my parts. The good to go, when I have time to do this, I know it sounds silly to say that, but the good to go is the G2G you see there. The G2G is just means good to go. So what that does is that puts a green dot up on the screen, and it's named good to go. And this is my way of doing a sort of a quality assurance stamp. So when I've made a part and I'm close to sending it out, you know, this is a production file ready to send to the router. But before I do that, I'll try to take the time, to audit each piece. And if everything's ready to go, then I'll do a good to go right here. And that just creates a little stamp. And I will drop that next to the part that if I like it and it's good to go, then that's where that goes. And then later, when I export all this, I can just easily find these by, again, using this. And I click on G to G right here. It finds my goods to goes, and then I can just get rid of them. But that's my way of then being able to look at a page and I see green dots next to everything. And I know that I've kind of gone through it and assessed that, it's good to go. Because like this page here could represent thousands and thousands of dollars. And if it gets sent wrong or incorrectly, it's very, very expensive. So basically that's what these guys are for right here. Moving down, this whole line here is for dealing with text sizes. So changing text on the fly is very important for me, because I'm oftentimes trying to convey, like this right here, this live text. I'm trying to convey information to people who are going to watch this or read this later. So again, you do this in Corel natively, but instead of going over and finding it and all that, here's your properties thing again. And the size of things is really, finding the font and then also changing the size. There's no real drop-down menu for a lot of this stuff. And so again, you have to stop what you're doing and type. So instead, I have these hot buttons, and because I work in 1-to-1, so an inch equals an inch, I oftentimes, my kind of default is around 4 inches. So when I type something, then it's going to come out at a 4-inch tall height for those letters. And that kind of works for when I do. But sometimes I do need to boost that size up quickly. So instead of going and trying to find it and change it and type it, I just hit these buttons, and these buttons will hot size to that inch size just that quickly. So, so I think that was at 4. There you go. But like a lot of times what I'll do is like these numbers here denote the bend order. So I'll have these buttons, I'll have these letters here on the sides and on the top and the bottom. And sometimes these come out a little too big, they come out a little too small. So these are 2-inch right now. All I need to do is select them, and I can make them an inch, I can make them 1.5 inches, 2 inches, whatever looks good. Obviously 10 inches is way too big. So this just allows me to quickly change these things as fast as possible by, again, having dedicated hot buttons that do all that work for me as fast as possible. If I want to make this 10, I want to make this 8. That's all. And then having an other. So just like when you're filling out a form, you kind of have a blank that says other that you can put your own answer. I try to do that with all my stuff. I have an other. So I can put, 30 here, and I'm doing something that requires 30 all the time. I now have a hot button, and it will change it to 30 just that quick. So, but we can change it back to 6 or whatever it was. So that works. That might actually have been 4. That's better. See, just that good. I kind of see what's going on. Oh, somebody's here. So anyway, so that's a quick way to change all of my my font sizes. So again, as long as it's live text, once I convert it to curves, this doesn't do any good. So moving over, again, some of this stuff has been abandoned. I don't really use this button anymore. That was to scale text and stuff like that. A lot of this is vestigial. It doesn't really work anymore. So count and that's also the Launchpad quantity count. I'll show you how that works. So for this is really handy because this just puts the count of something, the quantity of something on the screen. So let's say that I'm counting these power supplies. So here I have these power supplies. These red squares are power supplies. And let's say that I want to know how many there are in this. So what I can do is I can hunt them down because I have them named. This is a France one, and you can look down here at the bottom left. I have it named. So if I hit pick, I grab it, then I can just hit go, and it's going to find all 20 of them. Now, if you look at the bottom, Corel will tell you how many, but if you push this button right here, count, it puts it on the screen for me. So now I have 20 of these, and I know that. And what I can do is I'll color coordinate it. I'll make it red, so I'll know that the red is there. So now I know I have 20 of those. And then to pass that information on to the homies, I'll use my stencil machine here, and I'll type like, France power. And then that's defaulted to 4 inches here, right? Because it's an awful lot bigger than the Corel default, which is great. And then I'll hit print, and it puts it in the middle there. So, and again, so now this is a little bit big. It looks funky. So what I'm going to do is down here on my bar, I just hit 2, and I can bring it down a little bit. And that looks good. And I'll just line up the bottom. So now I know I have 20 France power. And that's what this is really powerful for. The other button takes that quantity and it will load it into the Launchpad. And then all that does is just gives me the ability to put quantity 20 with it. So I push that button, and you can see where it says 20 here. And then all that does is give me QT20, and it's in an Arial font, whatever. So it's just a little different, but putting quantity 20 so I don't have to type it. So this will put quantity 20, but what that does is it allows me to also do sets each as shown. So that'll do a full sentence. So that lets people know that, quantity 20 sets each shown, or 20 each, it's a quick way to type that. Or quantity 20 as shown. So this is a little more powerful there, but that basically takes the value that I have and either puts it on screen directly, or it'll send it to the Launchpad where I can then verbalize it quicker, because like I say, I'm always open warfare on keyboards. So who likes to type? I don't. So that's what these buttons are for. The clear clip copy paste is yes. It's like Control C, Control V, Control X, I get it. But again, I don't want to take my hands off what I'm doing. I, see my other video where I use my hand. I don't touch the keyboard. I try not to touch keyboard because again, cognitive load, economy of motion, just keeping the game. So this just allows me to copy, paste, just that simple. I hit the button, it's copied, hit it, paste. But I also added the functionality of being able to clear the clipboard. And Corel lets you do that behind the scenes. So, and that's important because sometimes, if I copy paste this whole thing, I've now loaded this into RAM or whatever, but let's say I don't want that, or I accidentally hit paste again, here it comes again. So what I can do is hit clip clear, and that way I'm safe. I won't accidentally paste again an entire thing. So, but it also helps clear up RAM in case you copy paste a very large picture or something like that. So I keep that in the corner, and I keep it down here to the point where if my bar is not available, I almost don't know how to copy paste anymore because it's like, where's my buttons? It's muscle memory now to come over here, copy paste. It's kind of funny. So below that, where the green is, this whole line deals with changing page size. And again, it's very simple to do it in Corel, but it takes several steps. So here's my page, my default page, because I work in full size. My default page is 800 by 600, 800x by 600y. So you can see we're up here at the top. And this is how you change it. So you come over here and you type 1200 and you push the button and whatever. So in order to facilitate not having to do that, I made hot buttons, because what happens is my 600 by 800 is a good start. But sometimes, like here, this is where I'll start. And then you can see where I kind of move things over, and I'll work over here, and then I'll work over here, and then I'll start going, oh, I need more room, and I need to go taller, and I need to go wider. And so what I'll end up doing is changing and shifting the size of the page. And all I need to do at that point is just push the buttons, and it'll make them bigger. So I have my Y's here, and I have my X's here, and it's just that easy. So again, as I'm working, I don't even have to stop and think. I just say, oh goodness, I need more room. I hit a button, and now I have it that much bigger. And then I hit a button, it's that much bigger. Or it changes it back to the smaller size. And I know a lot of people say, well, I like to keep my page to the size that I'm working, so I don't have to move around that much. But again, because I'm making components and I'm kind of in a real world atmosphere, I treat my page, 800 by 600 or whatever, sort of like a shop. So you walk into a large warehouse that, you make stuff in, you don't change the size of your shop. You just have stations you work at. And that's kind of how the layout is. Like I start with this station, and then this station, there's these parts. And then I kind of work my way up this way to keep it in an exploded view and keep everything in line. But then I kind of go this way. But I'm not like going, oh, I'm going to go over here and then carry something, and then I'm going to work over here. I just start expanding out, but I'm not worried about the size of my page. Now, granted, eventually, if I'm going to try to make a PDF of this for other civilians to use, then I do need to figure out how to bring this down into a printable page, and that's kind of a nightmare. That's why all my PDFs, I just keep full size. And then the guys who use them are not civilians. They've learned to read the chicken bones and the runes and stuff, and they know what's up. So I'm lucky in that respect, but that's kind of what making these hot to change these rather than having to stop, go up here and constantly change the size of your page to fit what you're doing versus treat this just as like a warehouse. It's just, this is where I do my stuff. I walk in and it's a fresh warehouse, and then I start to get crazy. And then as I need more room, I can expand, just that simply. So anyway, so those are just hot buttons for that. The other one is the page set. So you see P set 1. That's when I have a lot of pages. So you can see here, I start getting a lot of pages, and that's why I have the page turner. You saw that I get a lot of requests for this. You can see the other video for that. But let's say I want to change the order of these. Now Corel, again, it's easy. You just hold down and drag, and you can see where I'm taking page 7 and I'm changing the order of pages, and that's fine. So there's page 7 would be there, and now it's page 3. But again, the reason why I created the page turner to begin with is when you start getting a lot of pages and you want to try to drag page 18, all the way, or page 15 or whatever, all the way to the front, you can't really do that. So I made this to be able to fast assign pages. So if I want to make page 7 page 1, I just push the button. Now page 7 is 1. And if I want to bring it back to 7, I just push that. It goes back to 7. Or if I want to make page 7, page 10, then it goes to page 10. I shove it back there. So just that easy. That's what this little guy is. It's just dealing with pages and being able to bust them back and forth as fast as possible. So, and also dealing with pages, while we're here, we're talking about our page, our percentage. So let's say I'm dealing with this right here. There's 2 percentages right here on the bottom right there. Number one, the 2%, it's merely because sometimes with Corel, when I open a file from new, it kind of gets something in its eye and I can't zoom. Like right now I'm just zooming, I can zoom in and out. But sometimes when I open a new file, brand new, and I go to revisit it, it's stuck and I can't zoom in. And so I found that by just forcing it to a different zoom perspective by code, like 2%, it breaks it, and then I can get back to business. So this 2% is just a weird thing to like, sometimes I have to break right when I open a file, I have to break it by pushing 2%. It brings it to this zoom, and then I can kind of move around. The other one is 86%, is a strange thing that changes depending on what monitors you're using and what graphics card and stuff. So I found that for my home, if I create a 2x2 square, in order to have it on my screen 2x2, then I hit 86%. And that brings it to this right here and this right here. If I take a ruler and hold it to my screen, then I have a 2x2 square literally on my screen. Now, if I go like this, I'm zooming in. In Corel, it's still 2x2, but if I'm looking at it on my screen, it's obviously much bigger than that. So if I want to try to do a little quick, rapid prototype, as long as a shape fits on my screen, if I hit 86%, then I can tell. So if I have like a bolt or some kind of hardware and I want to see if it fits in this, I can hold it up to my screen and then that is a true size. Or let's say I'm making an access panel and I want to know if this box right here can fit my hand, then I can just hit 86% and I can hold my hand up and I can kind of imagine myself like, yeah, I can get my hand in there. A lot of times I'll take a tool. So if there's a bolt that's going to be kind of hindered, impinged on to see if a socket wrench will fit in there, I can do the thing, make it 86%, and I can literally hold the ratchet up with the socket on there and see, yeah, they should be able to get in there. It's going to be tight, but it's fine. Otherwise, I can make adjustments and stuff. But as long as it fits on my screen, the 86%, that's why that's there. Object Manager, that button, Obj-Mans, that's also no longer working. I can get rid of it eventually when I get to it. That was a way of turning the Object Manager from Corel on and off. But they changed the way it works under the hood. And so this button kind of is just, and I've changed the way I work. I used to keep the Object Manager actually on my screen here. And I stopped doing that. So I don't need that button anymore. So we'll get rid of that eventually. These buttons here are just hot buttons for bringing in I have some fun bitmaps that I use for reference. So let's take a look at, let's say this page here. So this is a reference, again, I'm a hip hop head. So this is a reference to doing a crisscross fashion when it comes time to bending metal. So sometimes we have large panels and we borrow this from the HVAC industry where you'll put a crisscross bend on this panel to give it strength. And so in order for me to denote that to the guys who are doing production, these are going to be panels here that cover this whole operation. But in order to not have just this flappy, just for fun, I'll drop in that the crisscross, and then I'll put that on there. So it's just a little fun there. The other one is the Rosie the Riveter. This one I show for like if I'm going to do, I want something welded up strong. So this is my welding spool gun, but I'll make sure that the guys know that, make sure you weld the crud out of it, make sure it's super strong, make sure it's really good. Or I'll also denote this based on this. You're going to have to do this by hand. So if there's something that the brake isn't going to bend or it can't get to, I'm going to tell them that you're going to have to bend this by hand. put some muscle into it, bend it up. And I will put a little bit of note with it, to make sure that they know what's going on. The other one is the Mickey Mouse hand. So I will use this as in like, this is a handhold, or make sure, that, where you're going to put this here, make sure, you're going to use your hand for that. Or I can, make a buster out of it. And I call it a buster where, here you go. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to hit red. It makes it a red outline. And then I'll do something like this. And then let's say that's going to be let's just make it 0.5. There you go. So that's my way. It's a little thick. Let's just do 0.2. There you go. So that's my way of saying, watch out, no hands there, danger, Will Robinson. So just that quick, I can transfer that information, but I keep those hot loaded here. I know, and it's another thing, I can use my symbols, and I do have symbols for these, but going over to this on the other page, going down, finding it, clicking here, it's taking me out of the game, versus taking the time to hot code a button, and you just push a button, there it is. You push this button, there it is. Nothing better. And again, super customized. That's why that's there. So moving on, these buttons here, this is for creating things. So as we're riveting things, this is my rivet hole. So I have a dedicated circle. This circle right here is 0.17. We use 5/32 rivets. And when it's time to rivet things together, I just push a button. There's my rivet hole. And there's my rivet hole. Now, again, you can create this, but the thing is, this is also named. So not only does it create a circle, it fills it with the color that I want, and it names it. So boom, there you go. Same thing with UL hole. So this is a drainage hole that's required by UL. So it's a certain size. It's a little bit bigger than required, so that way we don't get in trouble. And it's also named as drain hole. That's the name of it. And it's a certain color, so I can recognize it when I see it. So when I see these little blue circles, I know these are rivet holes. And when I see these purple holes, these are drain holes. Let's go over here to this raceway, and you'll see there's my drain holes, and I just sprinkled them right there. And you can see where all of these blue rivet holes are. So this entire thing, you can see here, there's our rivet gun, and you're just gonna rivet everything, but you can see that's how I built these. I just quickly sprinkle my rivet and my UL holes, and we're moving on. So again, super powerful. Just below that are nuggets. These little guys are for notating the profile of metal. So let's go over here to like the Eagle Mountain here. So when I'm looking at here, like this right here is 090 looked at on the side. And then this is 090 looking at the side. So you can see where this little nugget is a stand-in for this corner. And then when I make this go up, it now transfers that corner to here. And I know that this guy here is long, and then this guy here is short. You can see, but these things are called nuggets. And these nuggets let me know that I'm gonna have to shorten. So you can see where I shortened that down to the length of the nugget. And I took that 090 out because this 090 is gonna win. So I know that this edge wins, and this edge basically loses. That's how I call it. But when I need to create these really quickly, I have nuggets. So there's my nugget, there's my nugget. There's my 90, here's my flat. I also have them for 063. So there's for the thinner metal, the usual suspects. So that's what these buttons are for. I call them nuggets, nugget 90, nugget, and nugget 90. So when I need to create nuggets, boom, there they are. So moving on, again, just so much here. You guys asked for it though. So just really quickly though, weld and trim. When I need to weld something, need to trim something, sure, just like up here, Corel will do it for you, but this actually does it, and it welds it and names it, or it welds it and it will name it and fill it if I click this, or if I trim something, it sends it to the back, which I oftentimes want to do. So if I trim this with this and I trim it, this gets sent back all the way to the back, and it gets out of the way. What I mean by that is the back of the page. So you can see where solid colors will block the things in front of it. So when I do a trim, it then automatically sends that to the back. So again, most of my macros, I try to have them do multiple things. So that's all that is. It's very easy. Break nodes is no different than, let's say we go here and let's do a word here. This is for diffuser. And we want to break this apart into all of its little, each of these little segments need to be broken apart. Now you would select all these, you'd right click, you'd hit break apart, and then you'd have to come over here and hit break apart, decombine, and all that, break apart, to get each of these little segments to be separated, right? Whereas if you want to, do something like this and break these apart quickly, then all you got to do is hit break nodes. It double checks to make sure you hit that, and now you have everything's broken apart. But it's done that quickly. You can also then do batch processing, which let's see. Let's do some circles here. So again, this only works when you do one at a time with Corel, but with this, you can actually take all of these and then hit break nodes, and then it'll batch process all of them and do each one. So that way you can do multiple objects very quickly, all at once, without having to go through right click, break apart, right click, break apart, right click, break apart. So anyway, so again, just adding that functionality, huge. Make through shapes. So make through shapes, basically, when I'm doing my wireframes, you'll see where this wireframe, let's see, let's go to this page here. There you go. This is more of a clear. So I'll do a wireframe, and then I'll work from wireframe, and I'll create a solid shape that then gets sent to the router. So when I'm ready to make a through shape, I select the shape, and then I hit this button here, the Make TS, and what it's going to do is create a shape the same size as what I selected, and it will also fill it with a color, and it names it through shape, so that way I can find it later. So that's very important for like this right here. This is the through shape for all of this. But if I wanted to just select all this and I hit through shape, it's going to make one giant through shape for anything that's selected, whatever size it is. I hit that button and it takes that, computes it, and makes it the size. So if I selected this, I'm just that easy. Now, BAM, little tribute to Emeril Lagasse there, cooking shows. If I push this button, it creates an unfilled version of that. And it also just names it as a rectangle. It's not a through shape. I don't want this to be a through shape. I want to work in wireframe. But I want to make an outline, just for whatever reason, I just want to make a shape of that. It's good for like duplicating like a rectangle. Like if you just want to make a rectangle of this, then now you have a rectangle you can mess with, and it's ready to go, and it's named, and then later you can get rid of it. Anyway, this is actually pretty handy. So that takes care of those. These guys here are horizontal, vertical, and horizontal, vertical. And again, Corel will do that for you. But let's say you have an example like these letters here, these numbers. Now, Corel can only flip things one at a time, or if you have multiple selection. Like you see, I have all 6 of these. If I hit up here at the top, if I hit flip, it flips everything and it's wrong because it took the whole thing and mirrored it. Whereas if I do the same selection of everything, this macro iterates through and it just flips things horizontally on its axis where it is. And it also does it vertically where it is. So that's really important, super handy, versus the way Corel does it. It does it all as one unit, and that can be very annoying. But sometimes I do need to go through, like if I'm going to take this and for some reason I need to mirror the whole thing, but now all my numbers are wrong, then I can just go here and grab my send it, hit my alphas, select those, and then I can hit horizontal, and then I go ahead and just flip those right back. So we're good to go. So that's those, horizontal. Order up, again, I don't use that much anymore. That was when I used the object manager. I could use this button to actually take things that were alike and order them top to bottom. And it was kind of important when I used to use this a lot more. But I don't use that much anymore, so that button's kind of deprecated. One of the early things that I also made this bar for is changing angles of things. Now Corel, again, when you want to do that, it makes it somewhat easy, but we'll do the rectangular here, and we'll do a 2 and a 2, and we'll just make a bunch of rectangles here, and we'll throw some fill on them. So again, Corel is good at doing things, but it does things one at a time, and that's just how it does things. Versus, let's say, so if you want to rotate this with Corel, you got to stop, come up here to this little top thing, and then you have to type what you want. So if we want to move these 45 degrees, then you type in 45, you hit enter, and the whole selection moves 45. Versus, let's say each of these you want to rotate 45 on their axis. Well, I have a hot button ready to go. So you just hit recursive, you hit 45, and that keeps all of them where they are, and it batch processes them where they are. If you want to take them back to 0, hit 0. Or, yes, just like Corel, I hit a hot button, I go 45. But in order for Corel, if you want to go the other direction, then you have to mentally think, because it only goes counterclockwise. So if you want to go the other direction, you have to type a minus first, and then you have to go minus 45, and then they will go the other way. But again, why not just have hot buttons? So for all the usual suspects, I have 22 and a half, I've got 30, I've got 45, I've got 60, 135, 240, anyway. So, and then the whole thing, I got 270, 180. And it's so much easier to just have hot buttons for this stuff. Corel can do it, but you got to sit there and type like an animal. So this whole thing is just for angles, doing quick maneuvers really quickly. And we're getting to the bottom here. This whole row here is for subtracting amounts. So it's almost like an anti-nudge. It's the opposite of nudge, where nudge, you can move things around. This actually shrinks things by I can either type, or I have a pull down menu of known constants that I always use when I'm shrinking things. So let's say we know that this is 2 by 2, and we'll make this red, and we'll send that to the back. Now I want to shrink the one on top by 1/8 on the top and the bottom. And so you can see where it instantly shrunk top and bottom. And so the 2 by 2 behind is showing. And I also want to shrink this one left and right. I have left and right here. It does both sides. So now I've made this smaller by 1/8 all the way around. Let's say I want to do just this side, and I want to do the right side, and I want to do the right side, and I want to do the left side, I want to do the left side, I want to do the left side, top and bottom. That's what this is for. It shrinks things quickly. I use this all the time when I'm creating products. Now, this just adds it back. So the green button is go, the yellow buttons are remove. So I can actually add it all back and, well, go over, but if you want. So anyway, so that's just add and subtract with a pull down menu, or I can type that. But here's all my usual suspects. Most of the time I'm shrinking things by an 090, because like when I'm dealing with who wins and who loses. So going back to the nuggets, you see you have the nugget that's long, and you see you have the nugget that's short. Well, in order to pull this back an 09, I actually use my shrink down here. So I'm shrinking this piece 09, and I would just push this button and it shrinks this piece necessary. You can see how much this sticks out. That's where I need to shrink it. Watch, bam, shrunk 09. Now this part's ready to go. And now I know this part will fit underneath this part. So that's super powerful. Or if I need to add it back, I add it to that side, whatever. Anyway, so we're good there. The other part here is feet. So this is a weird thing in the middle that I kind of added. So this here is for doing my switching over from architectural to the decimal that we use. So all the parts that I make are in decimals, because I have to send them to the router machine. And the router only knows decimals. It doesn't know feet and inches and all that. Yeah, I'm in America, so we use all the funny stuff. I use this to double check when I have to switch from architectural readouts that say 4'1", things like that. Yes, I do the math in my head, but I like to make sure that I'm correct. So if I'm doing a footing or something like that, I'll read this and it says this needs to be 4'1". So I know in my head that that's 49 inches. But what I can do also is Corel lets you actually type that in. So if I go 4'1", Corel will transfer that to 49 inches. And it also is 24 inches wide. So, I'll see, so I can't type. So there you go. So this theoretically should be the footing size here. But what I like to do is I confirm that I'm right. So I made this little thing that converts this immediately so I can just see. You can see where it says 4'1" and 2 foot. And so all this is just a architectural readout converter to make sure that I'm right. So I can build this sign based off of their architectural layouts. And then I just use this to confirm that I was correct. So all it does is it converts from, 205.11, whatever. I hit this and it takes it to the nearest 16th. So I know this is 17 feet, 1 1/8 inches by 9 feet, 9 1/16, or actually 0/16, whatever. But it's a glitch. I can only do so much. That's all that is. These buttons here, all they are, these guys here are just launchers for all of the stuff that I use a lot. So these buttons here just call all other machines. Like this here is my slot machine. This here makes when I need to make slotted things for bolts and things like that. I just push the button. You put in the size. If you want a 1/2 inch slot for a 1/2 inch bolt, you push the button. There it is. So I can call that with that. Inserts maker. This allows me to do inserts, brass inserts or riv nuts quickly. Line them up. This brings up this little guy here. So you can see where just this allows me to quickly call what I need. Same thing here when I'm doing my dog bones or when I'm doing my stud weld stuff. This all calls all that stuff. Switch and switch plate. So let's get these out of the way. So when I'm calling a switch, this is an actual profile of the switches we use, a snap switch. So like when I'm doing, like this right here is a power supply box for some signs we're doing. So we have a patent pending way of keeping the snap switch protected by UL inside its own little box, but it also recesses the switch back so it's not sticking out in the weather and the boot's getting beat up and things are happening to it because snap switches aren't very hardy. So by creating a little box, we call it a birdhouse, that goes inside the thing here, because according to UL, water can't be present where a snap switch is. So if a snap switch is here, water can't be in here. But if you put the snap switch in its own enclosure, that's not going to get wet, then you're fine. So we go this little extra step to protect the snap switch. It keeps UL happy. But in order to quickly lay this out, all I have to do is push the button there and I get a scale model of our snap switch so I can then use it where I need to. Also, here comes the police. We also have a modular removable switch plate, which allows for proper mounting, and it makes it easier for install or fabrication to install the switch, because it's very difficult to get your hands in there and you're using those little rings and you have to put the boot on and all that. So this here is our switch plate that we use that's modular. So this switch plate gets routed separately and we can mount the switch properly on its own. Then what we do is we then take it and install it inside the birdhouse on its own screws. That way, it's easy to do, it's easy to service, because a lot of times it's hard to get in there, to try to get your hand in there to try to make this work. It's a real pain in the booty. So in order to have this little switch, it makes it easy. And that way you make sure you get a proper alignment of the boot. You make sure everything's really good. So that's it right there, just the switch. I can call these things when I'm doing power holes, things like that. And you can see it's a little bit green there. When I'm calling for a power insert for like a conduit in, I hit this. This gives me a 0.875. That's for our conduits. And this is for also for a power, things like that. And last but not least, closing in on it, this is just for slotted screws. So when I need to use a number 10 screw, and I'm going to make a little screw hole cover there, I'll make a little slot, but I'll also make the hole that the screw goes into. So all I need to do is hit this button, and I will then get a slot that's oversized for the screw. And at the same time, I get the same hole ready for the screw. And then I leave one on one and leave one on the other. So you can see where this is where the screw hole goes. And then this is where the slot is. And so all I got to do is push this button, and I get one of those. And I get one at 90 already turned. And then I get also one that's straight. So this one here is not slotted. So if I want to keep it centered and I don't need the extra play up and down, left and right, then all I got to do is hit those buttons. And that gives me those. So anyway, so I think we did full circle, came all the way around. I did the best I could to keep it fast, but again, this thing has a lot of power. As you can see, I skimmed over a lot of stuff. You know, we'll go over Magic, Magic Box Machine. The Magic Box Machine is what creates all of this. The Magic Box Machine is what creates, all of this. So the extrusions, the tools necessary, all of this is in one thing here. And I use this to call it. Anyway, and I'd like to go over one of these days, I'll go over how I use these colors to create all the components and how they work and how they align and everything. So I think that'll be a cool thing. So anyway, appreciate you guys, and if you have any questions, hit me up.
Check the technique. Check the technique. See if you